Welcome to Pioneers in Payments, where payments experts share their insights. Now, here's our host, Donna Blum.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Pioneers in Payments. Today, it is my great honor and privilege to talk with Amy Smith from the Clearinghouse. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, how are you, Donna? Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm doing well, and thanks for joining us. Really looking forward to gaining some insights from you today. So, before we get started, Amy, would you mind sharing with our audience a little bit about yourself and your background in the payments industry?
Sure, absolutely. So I am a senior vice president at the Clearinghouse, as Donna suggested. I am responsible for membership services and education. So what that means, there's actually two organizations that are known throughout the industry that actually report to me directly. They're two associations. One is ECCHO, which is exclusively a check organization. ECCHO was created way back in order to provide a set of rules and an opportunity for check professionals to gather around the exchange of check images. Once we migrated from physical paper checks traveling around the United States to check images, it was necessary to have a set of rules that govern the exchange of those images between financial institutions. So ECHO is actually an organization that lives within the Clearinghouse, and that team and the work of that team reports to me directly. The other association that reports to me is the Clearinghouse Payments Authority, and it is one of the payments associations around the United States that provides education, resources, direction, guidance, and compliance services to financial institutions across all payment rails. So both of these organizations cover check, but the Clearinghouse Payments Authority also covers ACH, wire transfer. How do card transactions work? What about Zelle and Venmo? What are the difference between those? So my team actually understands the rules and regulations and support the financial institutions who choose to belong to these two organizations. So that is predominantly what my team does. But in addition to that, I have been asked to walk with the product managers here at the Clearinghouse to curate and develop education around our various payment networks. So, what do I mean by that? The CHIPS wire transfer network, the real time payments network that moves credit push transactions instantaneously, the role that the Clearinghouse plays in being an ACH operator. So, we have, in my world, in those two membership organizations, we have thousands of financial institutions that belong. And then in terms of utilizing the products here at the Clearinghouse, we have, closing in on a couple thousand financial institutions who choose to process with the Clearinghouse. I'm all about education. That is the number one thing I do, is making sure we understand who are the stakeholders in the industry, what do they need to know in order to not only engage in commerce in the United States based on how money moves today, but what's going on in the future. And I come to this, Donna, after a couple of decades, several decades of banking experience. So I've been an employee with Comerica Bank, Bank of America, Continental Bank. If anybody's tuning into today's podcast from the Chicago area, Continental was an all business bank way back in the 90s. So I've been doing this for a long time. I was in treasury sales, I was in product management, and then I found this space, this association space, where we are all about, providing support to financial institutions and to corporate end users on how payments move in the United States. It's all about education.
Wow, I love it. I mean, so you talked about not just the clearinghouse's RTP network, but all payment rails, right? You
Absolutely.
talked about FIs and corporates, and and probably fintechs are in there too.
Absolutely. We have
It runs the
solution
gamut.
providers. Yeah, it really does, because I interact with what I refer to, I like to use the term solution providers. I know fintech was something that was created years ago, but when you talk about solution providers, you talk about non-financial institutions that may be pulled into the movement of money either by a financial institution or by a corporate. they could actually be augmenting a corporate end user, a hospital network, or a municipality, or a university, whatever. Solution providers come in all shapes and sizes. Some of those are core processors that financial institutions use to move the transactions to and from the operator, but also post to DDA. But they might also be somebody that underpins the user interface that they present to consumers and businesses that are supported by the financial institution. So, that broader group of solution providers, which I know is a big audience for you, Donna, are so critical in in the current payments ecosystem. So we engage them as well. If they want to learn and they want to understand the roles and responsibilities of the other players, we want to make sure that they understand that, so that when people come together, they can have more productive conversations about how they can help each other.
I think that's great. And that's one of the purposes of this podcast, is to help these organizations solution for the future, right? And
Right.
to navigate these very, you know, let's just say, changing and
Ooh,
innovative times. So,
yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. They have
Yeah.
somebody to go to for help and guidance.
Yeah. And we see more and more of them coming our way. So we appreciate their curiosity, because as they're building solutions, they need to understand foundationally how does money move on the various rails here in the United States. So that's our job.
That's great. I love it. Okay, so let's talk now, from your perspective. What do you think is the most notable trend in the payments industry today?
Well, yeah, it really is instant transactions. Obviously, and hats off to the ACH network, right? The ACH has been around since 1974. It truly is the workhorse and will continue to be a workhorse here in the United States. You think about direct deposit transactions, direct payment transactions, cash concentration. I mean, ACH is going to be here for a very long time. But I think the advent of instant transactions, we launched the RTP network in November of 2017. And the Federal Reserve came on board with their FedNow network in 2023. But more so, as our world becomes more digital, it has become more critical to be able to send a credit push transaction that is precise and instant and settles instantaneously. And we know that we needed to do that here domestically because of all of the instant payment solutions that have launched around the globe. So we although we're a little bit of a fast follower when it comes to what's happening in the European countries and other parts of the world, we could see what an impact that made, and the various use cases that were able to be supported by that. So when I'm spending the majority of my time talking about, when I educate people on what's new and what's coming and why they need to care, truly is understanding instant, and at a minimum for financial institutions to be a recipient of those transactions. And when we think about RTP and FedNow, they're credit push networks. And so really, I'm a mom of baseball players. It's really about being able to have a catcher's mitt and being able to catch those transactions on the receive side. Certainly, there's some financial institutions that have the use cases to be able to send transactions and introduce transactions into the network. But the number one trend is truly being a participant on these networks in the first place. And again, for this audience, these enablers, these solution providers, the majority of the financial institutions who went live early on were the ones that were connected directly to the network. And then when the Fed launched in 23, they connected directly to the Fed. But the majority of the financial institutions in this country are going to need a leg up. They're going to need somebody to help them make that connection, whether it's their core provider or it's an online banking provider. There's a lot of solution providers and fintechs that have been approved by both the Federal Reserve as well as the Clearinghouse to help support financial institutions in doing that. So I would be remiss if I suggested anything else. Are we talking about other things like stablecoin and DDA tokenization and all of the sort of the shiny pennies that are out there right now? Absolutely. But the number one priority that financial institutions and solution providers need to focus on is getting instant going for across the entire United States.
I agree. As a member of the Faster Payment Council, that is what we talk about a lot is how do we increase adoption of real-time payments, whatever that may be, whatever rail that may be across the entire industry. So that is definitely sort of the sweet spot, right? And I love how you said that we're a fast follower. Sometimes we talk about the U.S. lagging, and that's kind of a negative way to put it. We're fast followers, and sometimes that's not a bad thing because you can learn from what others have done before you, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. It's not a bad thing. I think we're just configured differently. There's a couple of things that make the United States different, right? It starts with 9,000 financial institutions. There's no other country on this planet that has that many financial institutions. It's not a bad thing. It's just our thing, right? So we can't move quickly. We can't like invite somebody from every financial institution in the United States to sit down at a table. But if you were in Poland, or some other European country, you might actually be able to get a representative from each institution in the room. They don't have that many to begin with. The other part of it is really the role and responsibility of the central bank. The Federal Reserve here in the United States has a number of obligations, but one of them is not to mandate that everybody adopt instant payments. In other parts of the world, it was a mandate. So for us, and again, like you said, the work that you're doing on the Faster Payments Council, we have to keep validating for folks and talking about why they need to do this. And in this current environment, where I think we're seeing a lot more M&A discussion, a lot of financial institutions kind of looking across the street and trying to decide if they need to partner with another institution. Part of that is driven by perhaps their own technological inability to innovate. If they can't do it, then they need to find somebody else that can partner with them and help them get there. So we'll keep talking about it, but we have seen some real progress this year and expect to see more in 2026.
that's great. Love to hear that. Okay, so we just talked about the most notable trend. Obviously, there are opportunities and there are challenges for organizations that process payments. What would you say is the greatest opportunity for those organizations?
Yeah. So for the organizations that power corporates and power, it really is to get in there and consult and help financial institutions build their business case to make the connection in the first place. And really boil it down so that because we're really focused on the credit unions and community banks. So the community financial institutions, helping them have that conversation at the board table so that they understand why it's necessary for them to make the investment in people, time, and potentially technology to adopt this network. Donna, I when I'm at the front of the room, I do a lot of I have the privilege to do a lot of public speaking, and I boil it down to this. Listen, back in 1974, somebody at your financial institution had heard about this new thing called ACH. And it was an alternative, it was an electronic alternative to a paper check. And somebody had to do the leap of faith and do the work in order to become a participant in the ACH network. Guess what? It's your turn. It's been 50 years. It's been 50 years. It's time to now adopt the next big network, the next big rail in the United States. And so the opportunity that your audience, especially the fintechs, the solution providers, the enablers have, is to help the financial institutions have that conversation and sell it at the board table, make sure senior management understands, and walk with them and help them get there. That is the opportunity. And there's so many opportunities in that space. But we've got to get them there.
Right. I love analogies, and I'm just kind of thinking you need to be on the train. The train's already left the station. You
Oh,
can still hop
and
on.
it's moving fast.
It's moving fast though, and eventually it's going to be out of reach. So if you're not
Yeah.
on the train, you
Yeah.
get left behind, and we all know what that means. So
Yeah. And at a minimum, just becoming a receive participant. That is step one. Just that catcher's mitt, being able to capture that transit, because And, there's two things that I say when I'm at the, one is, somebody had to do it 50 years ago. Now it's your turn. But the other one is that every financial institution in the United States has instant transactions bound for them. Whether that transaction is coming through FedNow or it's coming through RTP, there are transactions that are coming to them. But because they're not a participant, they're not getting them. Now, when I say that one-on-one to somebody, their eyes get big and they panic. Like, what's happening? Are they just dropping on the floor? And I go, no, unfortunately, they're probably in your ACH work. Whoever's sending them to you had to back up the bus and then send it to you via ACH. But what you need to understand as a financial institution is you are not getting this transaction at the speed in which it was intended. It was intended to be an instant transaction, rich with data, rich, and irrevocable. And now it's coming through the ACH. It's bound by a completely different set of rules. And eventually that's going to catch up with you. Eventually your account holders are going to go, well, why does Sally, at that institution, why is her transactions getting to her more quickly than mine are? Why? What are the limitations that are happening at my institution? So to your point, the train has left the station. It's moving very quickly, but there is time right now to join that. And that is the biggest opportunity.
Fantastic. Okay. So now what is on the flip side? What is the greatest challenge?
Yeah. So the greatest challenge I think that financial institutions have is all the noise. I was just with my team down in North Carolina this week, and we were talking about how noisy it is. I mentioned stablecoin tokenization earlier. We've got things coming out of Washington. Is the Federal Reserve going to grant skinny accounts? There's so much going on right now. And there's so much pressure on financial institutions to be compliant with regulatory obligations. So the challenge that we have is clearing the noise, is deciding, is kind of compartmentalizing what hot topics and payments do I need to track and kind of care about, and which ones are the ones that I need to dive in and accomplish. And the instant and the faster, the RTP, that's the thing you have to get accomplished. This other stuff that's sort of headline news, track it, but don't let it slow you down. I think that's the greatest challenge. When I talk to financial institutions and go, why haven't you jumped on the train yet? To use the analogy that we're using here. And they just go, oh, the burden of all that, that and Donna, the other challenge that they're facing right now is dealing with just fraud across all payment rails, right? So there is a ridiculous amount of fraud. There was a recent study done, I think it was an AFP study, that suggested that in all the fraud that we're experiencing right now in payments, 68% of it is actually in the card space, or I'm sorry, in the check space. Which, hello, I have responsibility for ECCHO, so I'm spending a lot of time talking about fraud, as you can imagine. So it's noisy. The challenge that we have is noisy. What do I need to care most about, and what should my to-do list look like? What needs to be at the bottom, as sort of keep an eye on it, and what needs to be at the top. And oh, by the way, I'm fighting fraud, and I have to be compliant. That is the challenge, is really kind of prioritizing the list.
Right. That's, as you were describing that, I was thinking just getting the priorities straight. What is a must-have? What is a nice to have? And focus on the must-haves first, right?
Yes.
So,
yeah. It's easy to get distracted. That's why I call it a shiny penny. It's really, like stablecoin is cool, and we're all trying to understand it and figure it out. But like, listen, that's okay. Devote some time to that. But this, keep your eye on the prize. Keep the eye on what is going to move your organization forward. Whether you're a financial institution or you're a solution provider, spend the majority, maybe it's an 80-20. Spend 80% of your time here, 20% of your time, keeping your finger on the pulse of the cool stuff that's coming down the pike, if that makes sense.
I think that's excellent advice. Thank you for that. Okay, so this question sometimes might overlap with some of what you've already shared. But if you were to take your sum total of knowledge and experience in the industry and provide our audience with one silver bullet piece of advice, what would that be?
Education. I mean, I know I started by talking about, my role is all about education, but it really does come down to being intentional and understanding the broader payments ecosystem. You can't again, with an audience like solution providers, you can't be narrowly focused on, I work for this company and this is what we're doing in the stablecoin space. You have to understand how money moves in the United States. You have to have that foundational knowledge. You can't just jump in the middle. You've got to understand what are the rails that are active today. Checks are still alive. Are we reducing the number of checks in the United States? Yes, in 6 to 8%. I do expect that to accelerate a bit over the next couple of years as there's more instant adoption. But you have to understand how cards move, and the notion that Mastercard and Visa actually have push to card solutions that create a similar user experience to RTP and FedNow. Do you understand that? You need to understand how and get a sense for user preferences, consumers as well as businesses. What are they adopting? What are their use cases? Because then you can bring all of that and understand foundationally how that widget or that thing that you're building at your company fits within the greater ecosystem. So it's education. And honestly, I say that and it's validated in the notion that we've got solution providers that contact us at the Clearinghouse Payments Authority and say, knock on our door and say, can I be a member? Because I need to learn all the stuff. People are actually backing up the bus and getting that foundational knowledge. So it's education.
Yeah.
It really is.
That's fantastic. So I used to be in a previous life, I was an efficiency consultant.
Okay.
I am a firm believer that you need to learn how to work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Now, these organizations could try to go out and gather all this information for themselves, learning about all the different rails, what Visa's doing, what MasterCard's doing,
Right.
or they can find somebody who already has all that knowledge. That's
Exactly.
so much smarter. And
Yeah.
Amy, you're one of those people.
Yeah.
So I do hope that people will reach out, our audience will reach out to you to get an education on all of this and to start making decisions more efficiently because they're equipped with all this knowledge and they didn't have to go seek it out themselves.
Right.
I
Right.
my advice is
Yeah.
seek wise counsel.
Yeah, there you go. I love it. And I am backed by an exceptional team of payments professionals. I think the team is about 17 of us. And for our members, we run a call center. We take calls all day long from our members. How do I deal with this transaction or that transaction? Or can you help me, with the words I need to sell my board on adopting RTP? Things, it could be a very strategic question, or it can be something very, what return reason code do I use for this ACH transaction? So we do that. We've got the education, we've got resources. We just know that you need to be armed with knowledge in order to move your organization forward. So we welcome the opportunity.
Yep, knowledge is power. So, Amy, before I let you go, I want to make sure that our audience knows how to reach out to you, to your team, to learn more about the organizations that you lead, about these services that you provide. What information would you like to share with our audience?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, you're welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Amy Smith from the Clearinghouse. So I'm happy to connect. I obviously follow the Clearinghouse as well as TCHPA. So the Clearinghouse Payments Authority, we use the acronym because it's the payment system, but it's the payments ecosystem. So you've got to use acronyms. TCHPA. So for sure, connect with us on LinkedIn. But if you navigate to the Clearinghouse website, so theclearinghouse.org. Once you land on the Clearinghouse website, you can learn all about the Clearinghouse. You navigate to products. You can learn about our role as an operator with the RTP network, our role as an ACH operator, our role in the CHIPS wire transfer network, and then we also have SVPCO, which is our check image exchange. So those are our products. that financial institutions choose to process with the clearinghouse. But you'll see in the top navigation TCHPA/ECHO, and that's my world. You can drill into the website vertical for TCHPA, which again is all things payments. And then if you're a check professional, certainly navigate to the ECHO vertical and learn a little bit about the role that ECHO plays in bringing check professionals together. And again, the work that we're doing with trade organizations in Washington to identify ways in which we can combat some of this fraud that's happening, especially in the check space. So theclearinghouse.org. We also have podcasts. They're called the title is Payments Nerds, but there are some great podcasts where folks from our marketing and communications team talk to financial institutions who have gone live on RTP or adopted the CHIPS network post ISO 20022 conversion. So there's all kinds of ways that you can learn a little bit more about what we do. But I welcome the visitors to the website and interest in joining us and learning more.
Thank you so much. Well, Amy, I just want to thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your wisdom with us and your great advice. And I just also want to thank everybody for watching today. Have a great day.